The galaxy of Warhammer 40k is a vast, tumultuous expanse where faith, war, and destiny intertwine. To understand the Horus Heresy, one must first grasp the scale and stakes of this cataclysmic event. The heresy wasn't merely a rebellion. It was a galactic civil war that forever scarred humanity's future and shaped the Imperium as we know it. It was a time when heroes became villains, trust shattered, and empires teetered on the edge of annihilation. Millennia before the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, humanity was united under the banner of the Emperor of Mankind, a figure of unparalleled vision and ambition. The Emperor sought to forge a galactic empire where humanity could thrive, free from the dangers of alien threats, demonic corruption, and the shackles of ignorance. To achieve this, he created the Primarchs, genetically engineered superhuman beings imbued with his essence. These 20 sons would lead the Space Marine Legions, the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen, in the monumental Great Crusade to reunite humanity's scattered worlds. The Great Crusade was more than a military campaign. It was a philosophical mission to establish the imperial truth, a rejection of superstition, and a devotion to reason and progress. Yet, beneath the surface of this grand vision lurked shadows of betrayal and ambition. The galaxy itself was not a blank canvas, but a battlefield, home to ancient alien empires, forgotten human colonies, and malevolent forces dwelling in the Imperium, a parallel dimension of chaos and raw psychic energy. It is here, in the confluence of destiny and design, that the seeds of the heresy were sown. The Emperor, despite his immense power, was not omniscient. His enigmatic plans and the secrets he kept from even his most loyal followers created cracks in the foundation of his empire. The Primarchs, while nearly divine in their abilities, were not immune to human flaws. Pride, envy, and doubt festered within them. The galaxy itself was rife with dangers, but none were as insidious as chaos. The Imperium, or Warp, was home to entities of unimaginable power, the Chaos Gods, who thrived on humanity's darker emotions. These malevolent beings watched the rise of the Emperor and his sons with a mixture of fear and malice, seeking any opportunity to corrupt and destroy his vision. The Horus Heresy would be the culmination of these tensions. It was not a simple conflict of good versus evil, but a deeply personal and ideological war. It asked questions that resonated across time. What does it mean to be loyal? Can power ever truly be wielded without corruption? And what happens when gods and men collide in a battle for the soul of the galaxy? As the Great Crusade reached its zenith, the Emperor made a decision that would set the galaxy on a path of ruin. He withdrew from the battlefield to focus on his mysterious hidden project on Terra, entrusting the leadership of the crusade to his favored son, Horus. It was a moment that should have cemented the unity of the Imperium. Instead, it opened the door to doubt, division, and treachery. This is the story of the Horus Heresy, a tragedy of galactic proportions, where the grandest dreams of humanity crumbled under the weight of ambition and betrayal. It is a tale of titanic clashes, unbreakable bonds, and the terrible price of hubris. In the coming chapters, we will unravel the key players, the pivotal events, and the enduring mysteries of this dark chapter in the Imperium's history. But for now, let us look back to the time before the fall, a time of hope, unity, and the belief that the future could be forged in humanity's image. The heresy began not with a bang, but with whispers in the dark, doubts left to fester, and choices that, once made, could never be undone. What followed was nothing less than the unmaking of a dream, the rise of chaos, and the shattering of a legacy. The galaxy would never be the same again. At the heart of the Horus Heresy lies a complex web of characters and factions, each playing a vital role in the unraveling of the Emperor's grand vision. These players were not mere footnotes in history, but central to the narrative, their actions shaping the course of humanity's future. Understanding their roles is crucial to uncovering the truth behind this galaxy-spanning conflict. The Emperor of Mankind stands as the keystone of the entire saga. A figure of immense power and vision, he sought to unify humanity under a single enlightened banner. His leadership, however, was not without controversy, and his enigmatic decisions, often misunderstood even by his closest allies, created fractures within the unity he so fiercely championed. His ambition to shield humanity from the warp's corrupting influence and establish a realm of secular enlightenment became the bedrock of the Imperium. Yet, his detachment from the day-to-day operations of his empire and his withdrawal from the Great Crusade left a void that others struggled to fill. Horus, once hailed as the Emperor's most trusted and capable commander, became the fulcrum upon which the entire heresy turned. Chosen to lead in the Emperor's stead, his elevation to this role set the stage for both unity and division. A charismatic leader and a figure of immense respect among his peers, he symbolized the potential of humanity's brightest future. However, his role was not merely that of a warrior. He was entrusted with the Emperor's vision, carrying the weight of a nascent galactic empire on his shoulders. This immense responsibility, combined with external influences, set him on a path of catastrophic betrayal. The other Space Marine legions were equally pivotal. Each was a reflection of their commander, embodying unique qualities that both unified and divided them. Some legions adhered strictly to the Emperor's vision, upholding the ideals of loyalty and sacrifice. Others were drawn to Horus's banner, their philosophies and grievances aligning with his growing dissent. These legions became the sword arms of the heresy, either clashing in brutal warfare or waging battles of ideology that tore the galaxy apart. Beyond the legions, the Mechanicum played a critical role. This ancient order of technologists and engineers, centered on Mars, wielded immense influence over the Imperium through their mastery of technology. Their alliance with the Emperor was built on mutual need rather than shared ideology, and their actions during the heresy revealed the fragility of this relationship. As tensions rose, factions within the Mechanicum sided with either Horus or the Emperor, their advanced weaponry and knowledge amplifying the scale of the conflict. The forces of chaos lurking in the Immaterium were the unseen architects of the heresy. These entities, ancient and malevolent, fed on the emotions and ambitions of mortals, turning them into pawns in their eternal struggle. They were not passive observers, but active participants, whispering into the minds of those they sought to corrupt. Their influence extended far beyond the battlefield, shaping events and decisions in ways that even the most powerful mortals could scarcely comprehend. The custodians, the Emperor's personal guardians, stood apart from the legions as his most trusted protectors. Their unwavering loyalty and unparalleled skill placed them in a unique position during the heresy. While they were rarely deployed in large numbers, their presence symbolized the Emperor's might and authority. They became critical in defending Terra and safeguarding the Emperor in the final stages of the conflict. The Imperial Army, humanity's vast conventional force, was another essential player. Unlike the genetically enhanced warriors of the legions, these soldiers represented the ordinary men and women of the Imperium. Their role was to secure the countless worlds brought into compliance during the Great Crusade. Yet, the heresy revealed the fragility of their loyalty, as many units were swayed by Horus's charisma or fear of retribution, while others stood resolute in defense of the Emperor's ideals. Among the shadows, the agents of the Imperial Inquisition were beginning to emerge. Though not yet fully formed as an institution, their predecessors operated in secret, uncovering plots and rooting out corruption. Their clandestine activities during the heresy hinted at the growing need for such an organization in the aftermath of the conflict. The Navigators and the adeptus astra telepathica, though often overlooked, played vital roles in the unfolding drama. The Navigators, with their unique ability to traverse the warp, enabled the movement of fleets across vast distances. Their loyalty was a linchpin in maintaining the Imperium's cohesion. The Psykers of the Telepathica, on the other hand, acted as conduits of communication and intelligence, their abilities both a blessing and a curse in the shadow of the warp's influence. Lastly, the civilian population of the Imperium cannot be ignored. Though often relegated to the background in accounts of the heresy, they were the foundation upon which the entire empire was built. Their labor, faith, and sacrifices sustained the Imperium through the chaos of war. As the heresy spread, these civilians bore the brunt of its devastation. Their worlds turned into battlefields, their lives forever altered by decisions made far above their station. The Horus Heresy was not a simple clash of armies or ideologies. It was a collision of ambitions, philosophies, and cosmic forces. Each participant, whether a mighty general or a faceless soldier, played a part in shaping the outcome of this monumental event. Together, their roles form the intricate tapestry of a conflict that continues to define the Warhammer 40k universe. The Horus Heresy did not erupt spontaneously. It was the culmination of deep-rooted tensions, ideological fractures, and external manipulations that had been brewing for centuries. To understand why this galaxy-shattering conflict arose, it is essential to examine the underlying factors that destabilized the seemingly unstoppable momentum of the Emperor's Great Crusade. These elements coalesced into a perfect storm, challenging the unity and purpose of humanity's grand endeavor. One of the foundational causes was the nature of the Great Crusade itself. While the Emperor's vision was monumental in scope, the rapid expansion of the Imperium created logistical, cultural, and ideological strains across its sprawling domains. As countless worlds were brought into compliance, their diverse populations, technologies, and belief systems were forced to conform to the imperial truth, a doctrine that dismissed religion and demanded adherence to a secular, rationalist worldview. This imposition often led to unrest, resentment, and resistance, creating fault lines that could be exploited by those seeking to undermine the Emperor's authority. The process of compliance was brutal and uncompromising. While many worlds accepted the Imperium's rule, others resisted fiercely, requiring military intervention on a staggering scale. This relentless cycle of conquest bred its own set of challenges. Some newly compliant worlds were left in disarray, their populations struggling to integrate into the Imperium's centralized system. Others harbored lingering resentments, providing fertile ground for rebellion and dissent. The pace and intensity of the crusade stretched the resources and patience of the Imperium, creating vulnerabilities that would later be exploited. Beneath the surface of the crusade lay another, more insidious issue: the Emperor's secrecy. Despite his immense power and vision, he withheld critical knowledge from even his most trusted subordinates. His refusal to fully explain the true nature of the warp, the existence of the Chaos Gods, and the ultimate purpose of his plans left many in the dark. This lack of transparency bred confusion and mistrust, particularly as the Emperor's actions often seemed contradictory or enigmatic. While he demanded absolute loyalty and unity, his aloofness created gaps in understanding that left room for doubt to fester. The Emperor's withdrawal from active leadership of the Great Crusade was another pivotal factor. As he focused on a secretive project on Terra, he left others to oversee the vast machinery of the Imperium. This decision, while necessary for his greater plan, left a vacuum of authority at a critical juncture. The absence of his direct guidance allowed rivalries and ambitions to surface, undermining the cohesion that had held the crusade together. It also created an opening for external forces to manipulate those left to shoulder the burdens of leadership. Among the most dangerous of these external forces were the entities of the warp. The Imperium, an alternate dimension of psychic energy, had long been a source of danger and mystery. The Chaos Gods that inhabited this realm thrived on the emotions and ambitions of mortals, subtly influencing events in the material galaxy. As the crusade progressed, the warp's influence grew more pronounced. The Emperor's dismissal of religion and his insistence on the imperial truth were intended to shield humanity from the warp's corrupting power. However, this strategy also left many unprepared for the reality of its existence, making them vulnerable to its seduction. The Chaos Gods were not passive observers of the crusade. They recognized the Emperor as a threat to their dominion and sought to subvert his plans at every turn. Their influence was subtle, working through dreams, whispers, and manipulation of emotions. Over time, they found willing or unwitting agents within the Imperium, individuals who could be used to sow discord and advance their own agendas. This interference added another layer of complexity to the already strained dynamics of the Imperium. Economic and technological factors also played a role in the mounting tension. The rapid expansion of the Imperium required vast quantities of resources, which strained even the Mechanicum's unparalleled industrial capabilities. Supply lines grew overstretched, and maintaining the technological infrastructure of a galaxy-spanning empire became an increasingly daunting task. The disparity between wealthy, well-supplied core worlds and the struggling frontier regions further exacerbated tensions. This imbalance created resentment and division, as those on the periphery often felt abandoned or exploited by the central authorities. Cultural differences between the many worlds of the Imperium also contributed to the growing instability. The diversity of humanity, while a source of strength, became a liability when forced into the rigid framework of the imperial truth. Ancient traditions, regional loyalties, and deeply ingrained belief systems clashed with the Imperium's standardized doctrines. This cultural friction created a sense of alienation among many of the Imperium's subjects, further weakening the unity that the Emperor sought to achieve. The truth behind the Horus Heresy lies in this confluence of factors. It was not a single event or decision that led to the rebellion, but a complex interplay of ideological, cultural, and cosmic forces. The heresy arose from the Imperium's own contradictions, its desire for unity clashing with its inherent diversity, its pursuit of enlightenment overshadowed by its reliance on violence, and its rejection of superstition, leaving it vulnerable to the very powers it sought to deny. The stage was set for a conflict that would shatter the galaxy and redefine the destiny of humanity. The question of what truly caused the heresy remains central to understanding the fragility of the Imperium and the forces that continue to shape its future. The events of the Horus Heresy unfolded over a series of critical stages, each marked by decisions and actions that deepened the fracture within the Imperium. Central to this unraveling was the rise and transformation of Horus, whose choices and increasing power sowed doubts about his true nature and intentions. His journey from celebrated leader to the architect of rebellion was not abrupt, but a gradual descent, shaped by conflicting events that left observers questioning the origin and purpose of his newfound strength. Horus's rise to power began with his appointment as the War Master, an elevation that placed him above all others within the Imperium's hierarchy, second only to the Emperor. While this honor reflected his battlefield prowess and leadership, it also exposed him to a dangerous combination of responsibility and isolation. Many within the Imperium celebrated his appointment, but others harbored jealousy and resentment. Horus found himself navigating a treacherous web of alliances and rivalries, some overt, others hidden beneath layers of formality and loyalty. As War Master, Horus faced immense pressure to uphold the Emperor's vision while managing the day-to-day realities of the Great Crusade. It was during this period that cracks in his resolve began to appear. Reports from the front lines hinted at uncharacteristically ruthless decisions and erratic behavior. Some saw these actions as the necessary pragmatism of leadership, while others whispered that Horus's judgment was becoming clouded. These rumors began to spread, planting seeds of doubt among his peers and subordinates. The turning point in Horus's transformation came after an incident on a world later regarded as pivotal in his fall. During what should have been a straightforward compliance mission, Horus was gravely wounded in battle. Accounts of this event vary, but it is universally agreed that his recovery was far from ordinary. The wounds he sustained were reportedly mortal, yet he emerged not only healed but seemingly invigorated, his presence and charisma amplified to unnatural levels. The means of his recovery, shrouded in mystery, became a source of speculation and unease. Those closest to him began to notice subtle changes in his demeanor. his confidence now bordering on arrogance, his ambitions seemingly outstripping his responsibilities. In the aftermath of his recovery, Horus's actions became increasingly erratic. He began consolidating power in ways that raised alarms among his allies and subordinates. Orders issued in his name grew more extreme, prioritizing total annihilation over negotiation in compliance campaigns. Worlds that once might have been peacefully integrated into the Imperium were subjected to brutal purges, their populations left decimated. These actions, while framed as necessary to maintain the momentum of the Crusade, struck many as disproportionate and unnecessary. Whispers of dissent grew louder, questioning whether Horus still acted in the Imperium's best interests or if he pursued an agenda of his own. As Horus's behavior shifted, so too did the nature of his relationships with those around him. Once known for fostering loyalty and unity, he began to surround himself with individuals whose motives were far from transparent. His inner circle became a mix of loyal supporters and opportunists, each jockeying for favor and influence. Reports of secret meetings and covert dealings surfaced, further eroding trust in his leadership. These actions fueled speculation about the source of his newfound authority, with some suggesting that Horus had tapped into powers beyond the material realm. The climax of these suspicions came during a series of campaigns marked by inexplicable victories and phenomena that defied logic. Horus's forces achieved triumphs that should have been impossible, their strategies bolstered by an uncanny prescience that seemed to border on the supernatural. Observers noted strange occurrences on the battlefield, unexplainable surges of power, eerie manifestations, and an unsettling aura that surrounded Horus himself. These events sparked fear and reverence in equal measure, as some viewed him as divinely favored while others suspected a darker influence at play. Horus's transformation did not go unnoticed by the Emperor's agents, who began investigating the growing disparity between his actions and the principles of the Crusade. Attempts to confront him, however, were met with deflection or outright hostility. Horus justified his decisions as necessary adaptations to the realities of war, dismissing concerns as the doubts of those unwilling to face the harsh truths of leadership. This defiance only deepened the divide between him and those who still clung to the ideals of the Imperium. Throughout this period, the question of Horus's true nature loomed large. Was he still the leader who had once exemplified the Emperor's vision, or had he become something else entirely? His actions suggested a growing divergence from the values of the Crusade, yet his charisma and authority made it difficult for many to openly challenge him. The ambiguity surrounding his motives and the origin of his power created a climate of uncertainty, where loyalty was tested and alliances began to shift. By the time the heresy erupted into open rebellion, the doubts about Horus had grown into a full-blown crisis of faith. His rise to power, marked by a series of controversial actions and unexplained phenomena, left a trail of unanswered questions. These events not only set the stage for the conflict, but also cast a shadow over the Imperium's understanding of loyalty, power, and the nature of leadership. As the galaxy plunged into chaos, the truth behind Horus's transformation remained elusive, a mystery that continues to haunt the Imperium to this day. The key turning point that irrevocably altered the perception of Horus occurred on the world of Davin, a place that would forever be etched into the annals of the Imperium's darkest history. This event was not merely a moment of physical consequence, but one of profound spiritual and psychological transformation, shifting the trajectory of the Great Crusade and the destiny of the galaxy itself. Davin was a world of limited significance in the grand scheme of the Crusade, a backwater planet that posed little challenge to the Imperium's might. However, it was here that Horus's fate took a decisive turn. During a routine campaign, a series of events unfolded that culminated in an encounter unlike anything the Imperium had anticipated. It began with a betrayal within Horus's ranks, a sudden act of treachery that left his forces divided and vulnerable. In the ensuing chaos, Horus was grievously injured in a confrontation that should have ended his life. What followed was the fateful decision to bring him to a hidden temple on Davin, a place steeped in ancient rituals and esoteric practices. The temple's origins were shrouded in mystery, and its caretakers were known for their connection to the Imperium, a realm the Emperor had strictly warned against engaging with. Despite these warnings, those loyal to Horus believed they had no choice but to entrust his life to these enigmatic figures, who promised to heal his wounds through methods unknown to Imperial science. The process of Horus's recovery was anything but ordinary. Those who bore witness spoke of strange incantations, eerie lights, and an overwhelming sense of unease that pervaded the temple. The atmosphere was heavy with an energy that seemed to defy the natural order, and the experience left even the most hardened warriors shaken. When Horus finally emerged, his physical injuries were miraculously healed, yet he was profoundly changed. The commanding presence and determination that had once defined him were now laced with an unsettling intensity. The transformation was not merely physical. Horus began to speak of visions and revelations that had come to him during his near-death experience. He described encounters with entities that claimed to reveal the true nature of the Emperor's plans, painting a picture of betrayal and hidden agendas. According to these visions, the Emperor had deceived his closest allies, harboring ambitions that would ultimately enslave humanity under his singular rule. These revelations struck at the core of Horus's beliefs, challenging his loyalty and reshaping his view of the Imperium he had fought to build. This pivotal moment marked the emergence of a darker, more calculating aspect of Horus's character. Where once he had sought unity and victory for the Imperium, he now began to question the very foundation of its ideals. The knowledge he claimed to have gained on Davin became the justification for his subsequent actions, fueling a growing sense of resentment and rebellion. He believed that the Emperor had abandoned the principles of the Crusade, and it was his duty to correct this perceived betrayal. The changes in Horus did not go unnoticed. His demeanor grew colder, his decisions more ruthless. Those who had once been his staunchest allies began to sense a growing divide between themselves and their commander. Whispers spread through the ranks of his forces, speculating on the true nature of what had occurred on Davin. Some regarded him with awe, convinced that he had been chosen by higher powers to lead humanity to a new future. Others viewed him with suspicion, wary of the influence that now seemed to guide his hand. Horus's shift in perspective was not confined to his own beliefs. He began to actively seek allies who shared his disillusionment with the Emperor's rule, forging connections that would later form the backbone of his rebellion. This process was marked by secretive meetings and covert agreements, as Horus worked to consolidate his power without drawing undue attention. These alliances were not based solely on loyalty or shared ideals, but were often forged through manipulation and promises of greater power. The events on Davin also had a ripple effect beyond Horus's immediate circle. News of his transformation and the rumors surrounding his visions began to spread throughout the Imperium. These accounts were met with a mixture of fear and intrigue, as they hinted at forces and truths that had long been suppressed. The questions raised by Horus's experience on Davin about the Emperor's intentions, the nature of the Imperium, and the fragility of human unity began to take root in the minds of others, creating cracks in the seemingly unshakable foundation of the Imperium. This singular decision to turn to the forbidden powers of Davin was the catalyst that set the Horus Heresy into motion. It was not merely the physical healing that altered Horus, but the awakening of a new perspective, one that challenged the very essence of the Emperor's vision. The events on Davin transformed Horus from a loyal servant of the Imperium into a figure of profound ambiguity, a leader whose motives and actions would forever be debated, and whose legacy would cast a shadow over humanity's future. This moment marked the point of no return, where the seeds of rebellion were irrevocably sown, and the galaxy's fate was set on a path toward chaos and destruction. The immediate impact of the Horus Heresy on the galaxy was nothing short of cataclysmic, a chain reaction of destruction and upheaval that reshaped the Imperium and left scars that would never fully heal. The truth behind the heresy carries immense weight, not only because it defines one of the most pivotal moments in human history, but because its full implications remain shrouded in mystery. If fully understood or revealed, this truth could fundamentally alter the galaxy's perception of its past, its present, and its potential future. The heresy fractured the Imperium at every level. Entire fleets and armies turned against one another, and previously united worlds became battlegrounds of ideological and physical warfare. The galaxy, already a dangerous and fragmented place, was thrown into a chaos that affected billions of lives. The unified dream of the Great Crusade, of a humanity brought together under a singular vision, was utterly shattered. The heresy exposed the fragility of the Imperium's foundation and laid bare the underlying conflicts and contradictions that had been festering for decades. For many, the revelation of Horus's rebellion was a shock that undermined their faith in the ideals of the Imperium. Horus had been a symbol of strength and unity, a leader whose actions inspired countless worlds to join the Emperor's cause. His betrayal not only created a military and political crisis, but also a spiritual one. Those who had believed in the righteousness of the Crusade now questioned whether the Imperium's leadership was as infallible as they had been taught. This erosion of trust created ripples that extended far beyond the battlefield, weakening the bonds of loyalty and cohesion that had held the Imperium together. One of the most immediate and devastating consequences of the heresy was the escalation of warfare on a scale previously unimaginable. The battles between loyalist and traitor forces were not limited to isolated skirmishes, but became full-scale planetary and system-wide conflicts. Worlds that had once been thriving centers of culture and industry were reduced to ashes, their populations decimated by the relentless tide of war. This level of destruction was not only a human tragedy, but a logistical nightmare, as the Imperium struggled to maintain control over its remaining territories while fighting a war on multiple fronts. The truth behind Horus's actions also raised existential questions about the Emperor's role and intentions. If the rumors and revelations surrounding Horus's transformation were accurate, it suggested that the Emperor's grand vision was built on a foundation of secrecy and manipulation. This realization cast doubt on the legitimacy of the Imperium's rule and the sacrifices made to build it. It raised the possibility that the Emperor's plans were not as benevolent or as clear-sighted as many had believed. For those who sought to uphold the Emperor's ideals, this was a difficult truth to confront, and for those who opposed him, it became a rallying cry. The heresy's influence extended far beyond the immediate conflict, setting the stage for the galaxy's future trajectory. The immense loss of life and resources weakened the Imperium to such a degree that it became unable to maintain the momentum of the Crusade. The dream of expansion and enlightenment was replaced by a desperate struggle for survival. In the aftermath of the heresy, the Imperium adopted a more rigid and authoritarian structure, abandoning many of the ideals that had defined its early years. The truth behind the heresy, its causes, its consequences, and its lingering questions became a subject of suppression, buried beneath layers of propaganda and myth. If this truth were ever fully uncovered, it could have profound implications for the Imperium and the galaxy as a whole. The heresy exposed the flaws and vulnerabilities of the Emperor's vision, and understanding these mistakes could offer a path toward a more stable and just future. However, it could just as easily unravel the fragile unity that holds the Imperium together. Revealing the full scope of Horus's motivations and the Emperor's actions might inspire rebellion or despair among those who cling to the Imperium's ideals. It would force humanity to confront difficult questions about loyalty, power, and the nature of leadership. The heresy also had a profound impact on humanity's relationship with the warp and its denizens. The involvement of the Immaterium in Horus's transformation and rebellion highlighted the dangers of ignoring or misunderstanding this otherworldly dimension. The Emperor's attempts to shield humanity from the warp's influence ultimately failed, and the heresy revealed the catastrophic consequences of this failure. If the truth about the heresy were fully explored, it might provide insights into how humanity could better understand and navigate the dangers of the warp. Alternatively, it could unleash forces that the Imperium has long sought to suppress. For those who seek to uncover the truth behind the heresy, the stakes are immense. The story of the heresy is not just a tale of betrayal and war, but a reflection of the Imperium's deepest flaws and contradictions. It raises questions about the nature of power, the cost of ambition, and the limits of human understanding. Understanding the heresy in its entirety could offer humanity a chance to learn from its past mistakes, but it could also reveal uncomfortable truths that the Imperium is ill-equipped to confront. The galaxy after the heresy is a place defined by fear and repression, its people taught to revere the Emperor and denounce all who opposed him. The truth behind Horus's rebellion, if widely known, could challenge this narrative and force a reckoning with the Imperium's history. It is a truth that holds the potential to either redeem or destroy, a reflection of the immense power and responsibility that shaped the galaxy's fate. The immediate impact of the heresy was devastation, but its long-term consequences continued to shape the destiny of the galaxy, making the search for its truth an enduring and dangerous pursuit. The Horus Heresy is surrounded by a multitude of unique and debated aspects that continue to captivate the Warhammer 40k community. Central to these discussions is the duality between what is officially recorded by the Imperium and the speculative narratives that arise from conflicting accounts and suppressed truths. This divergence between official history and alternative perspectives fuels endless debate about the deeper meanings and implications of the heresy. One of the most compelling topics is the role of the Emperor himself in the events leading up to and during the heresy. Many within the community question whether the Emperor's enigmatic decisions inadvertently set the stage for Horus's betrayal. The Emperor's withdrawal from active command of the Great Crusade is often cited as a critical moment that created the vacuum Horus filled. Yet, there are countless theories about why the Emperor chose this path. Was it an act of trust, allowing his subordinates to take the reins, or was it a calculated risk meant to test their loyalty and resilience? Some argue it was a necessary move to focus on his secretive project, while others believe it was an oversight born of hubris. Equally debated is the nature of Horus's transformation and whether his rebellion was entirely his own decision. The circumstances surrounding his fall, particularly his experience on Davin and the influence of the warp, are rife with speculation. One prominent theory posits that Horus was manipulated from the very beginning, his ambitions and doubts exploited by forces beyond his understanding. Others argue that the seeds of rebellion were already within him, amplified by external pressures but not entirely caused by them. These differing interpretations fuel discussions about Horus's agency and whether he was a victim of circumstance or a willing architect of chaos. Another aspect that generates significant discourse is the role of chaos itself in the heresy. The Chaos Gods, entities of immense power and malice, are often portrayed as the true masterminds behind the rebellion. However, the extent of their influence remains a point of contention. Some argue that chaos was the primary driver of the heresy, manipulating events from the shadows and using Horus as a puppet. Others suggest that while chaos played a role, the deeper causes of the conflict were rooted in the internal dynamics of the Imperium, such as political rivalries, ideological fractures, and the inherent flaws of its leaders. This debate touches on broader questions about the nature of chaos, whether it is an external force imposing its will or a reflection of humanity's own weaknesses and desires. The role of the various legions and their loyalties during the heresy also sparks intense discussions. Each legion's decision to side with or against Horus is scrutinized, with fans analyzing their motivations and the factors that influenced their choices. Some legions were swayed by personal grievances or ideological alignment with Horus's vision, while others remained steadfast in their loyalty to the Emperor. The question of whether certain legions were predisposed to rebellion due to their leaders' personalities or the Emperor's treatment of them is a frequent topic of debate. This discussion often extends to what might have happened if different choices were made. What if certain legions had sided differently, or if key figures had intervened earlier? The role of prophecy and foresight in the heresy is another intriguing subject. Throughout the conflict, numerous instances of cryptic visions and warnings were reported, some of which hinted at the events to come. These occurrences raise questions about the role of destiny and whether the heresy was an inevitable outcome of the Imperium's trajectory. Were the visions genuine glimpses into a predetermined future, or were they manipulations designed to push individuals towards specific outcomes? The ambiguity surrounding these prophecies adds to the mystique of the heresy, inviting endless speculation about their origins and purpose. Another layer of complexity lies in the aftermath of the heresy and how its events have been recorded or erased by the Imperium. The official narrative of the heresy, as propagated by the ecclesiarchy and other imperial institutions, is heavily sanitized, portraying Horus as a traitor consumed by ambition and chaos. However, alternative accounts and forbidden texts suggest a more nuanced picture, one where the lines between loyalty and betrayal are blurred. This censorship raises questions about how much of the truth has been deliberately suppressed to maintain the Imperium's stability, and whether uncovering these hidden histories would bring enlightenment or further chaos. The ongoing allure of the heresy lies in its unresolved mysteries. Fans often discuss the what-ifs and alternate scenarios, exploring how slight changes in key events might have altered the course of history. What if Horus had resisted the temptations of chaos? What if the Emperor had been more transparent about his plans? These hypothetical scenarios are not only entertaining, but also serve as thought experiments that highlight the complexity of the heresy's underlying themes. Finally, the heresy's impact on the broader themes of Warhammer 40k cannot be overstated. It represents a turning point in the galaxy's history, a moment when hope was supplanted by despair and unity gave way to division. The heresy is more than just a tale of war and betrayal. It is a reflection of the Imperium's inherent contradictions and the consequences of unchecked ambition and secrecy. This depth and ambiguity are what make the heresy such a rich and enduring topic of discussion, inviting fans to delve into its layers and uncover new insights with each exploration. The Horus Heresy was not just a tale of grand armies and galaxy-spanning battles. It was a deeply personal conflict, driven by the ambitions, flaws, and loyalties of the individuals involved. At the heart of this cataclysmic event were key figures whose actions, decisions, and relationships with Horus shaped the course of history. These individuals, each remarkable in their own right, exemplified the complexities of loyalty, ambition, and betrayal, and their personalities were as instrumental in the heresy as their deeds. One of the most enigmatic and controversial figures in the heresy was Lorgar. A visionary and a zealot, Lorgar's deep yearning for purpose and belief made him susceptible to the whispers of chaos. His intense devotion to ideals beyond the material world created a schism between him and the Emperor's doctrine of reason. Lorgar admired Horus, seeing in him a figure who could lead humanity in a way that embraced spirituality. Yet his unshakable need for validation also made him a pawn in the larger game of chaos. His relationship with Horus was marked by reverence and manipulation. He was both an ally and an instrument in Horus's rise. Magnus was a figure of incredible intellect and ambition, yet deeply flawed by his overconfidence. He sought knowledge above all else, believing that understanding the warp was the key to humanity's advancement. Magnus's relationship with Horus was complicated. While they respected one another's capabilities, their approaches to power and morality diverged. Magnus's ultimate flaw lay in his inability to perceive the consequences of his actions, a trait that chaos exploited. Though not directly aligned with Horus, Magnus's actions and their catastrophic fallout on Prospero indirectly facilitated Horus's rebellion. His brilliance and hubris made him both a tragic figure and a pivotal catalyst in the unfolding events. Angron was a stark contrast to others in the heresy. A warrior consumed by rage and trauma, he embodied the raw, destructive force of war. His past shaped his every action, driving him to fight not for glory or ideology, but to unleash his unrelenting fury. Angron's alignment with Horus was less a calculated decision and more a reflection of his hatred for the Imperium and its perceived hypocrisy. His relationship with Horus was built on mutual use rather than genuine loyalty. Horus saw in Angron a weapon to be unleashed, while Angron found in Horus a means to express his disdain for the Emperor's vision. Fulgrim was another significant figure, whose pursuit of perfection became his undoing. He was a master of art and war, driven by an insatiable desire to achieve greatness in every endeavor. Fulgrim's relationship with Horus was initially one of admiration. He saw in Horus a leader worthy of emulation. However, his descent into hedonism and corruption turned their alliance into a partnership of convenience. Fulgrim's vanity and susceptibility to flattery made him an easy target for chaos, and his transformation into something monstrous mirrored the moral decay that defined the heresy. Mortarion, the stoic and grim warrior, represented a different aspect of the heresy. His pragmatism and disdain for weakness shaped his worldview, making him resistant to the lofty ideals of the Imperium. Mortarion's alignment with Horus stemmed from a shared sense of alienation from the Emperor's grand vision. While he respected Horus as a leader, their relationship was devoid of warmth or camaraderie. Mortarion's methodical nature and resilience made him a formidable ally, but his inability to embrace change or compromise rendered him inflexible in the face of Chaos's manipulations. On the loyalist side, there were also individuals whose qualities and decisions had profound impacts. Sanguinius, often described as noble and compassionate, was a counterpoint to Horus. His deep bond with Horus made his eventual opposition all the more tragic. Sanguinius was a figure of hope and inspiration, embodying the best aspects of the Emperor's vision. Yet his compassion was also a source of vulnerability, as he struggled to reconcile the horrors of the heresy with his ideals. His loyalty to the Emperor was unwavering, but the personal cost of his resistance was immense. Rogel Dorn was another steadfast figure, defined by his unyielding loyalty and sense of duty. His relationship with Horus was one of professional respect that eventually gave way to profound betrayal. Dorn's rigid adherence to the Imperium's principles made him a bulwark against the tide of rebellion, but it also led to conflicts with others who favored more flexible approaches. His strength and discipline were instrumental in defending Terra, yet his inability to fully understand the emotional dimensions of the heresy created tensions within the loyalist ranks. Finally, there is the often overlooked role of Malcador. As the Emperor's closest confidant and the steward of the Imperium, Malcador's influence was subtle but immense. His wisdom and foresight allowed him to manage the Imperium's affairs in the Emperor's absence, but his efforts were constantly undermined by the chaos of the heresy. Malcador's relationship with Horus was distant, as he focused on maintaining the Imperium's integrity rather than engaging directly with the rebellion. Yet his actions, particularly in organizing the nascent Inquisition and ensuring the Emperor's survival during the Siege of Terra, were crucial to the Imperium's eventual recovery. These figures, each with their unique qualities, strengths, and flaws, exemplified the human dimension of the heresy. Their relationships with Horus, whether marked by loyalty, rivalry, or manipulation, were central to the unfolding conflict. The heresy was not simply a war of armies, but a collision of personalities, ideals, and ambitions that defined the galaxy's darkest hour. The complexity of these characters and their interactions continues to resonate with fans, highlighting the enduring appeal of this tragic saga. The Horus Heresy, as one of the most monumental events in the Warhammer 40k universe, is rife with unanswered questions and theories that fuel debates among fans and scholars of imperial history. These lingering uncertainties add an enigmatic layer to the heresy, making it a subject of endless fascination. The truth behind key moments, decisions, and outcomes remains obscured by conflicting accounts, propaganda, and the passage of time, leaving much to speculation. One of the most debated questions concerns the Emperor's motives and the true nature of his plans for humanity. While the Great Crusade and the establishment of the Imperium were ostensibly efforts to unify and protect humanity, the Emperor's secretive nature raises doubts about his ultimate goals. Some speculate that his withdrawal to Terra and his focus on a clandestine project hinted at ambitions beyond the material realm. Was the Emperor's goal truly the survival of humanity, or did he have other, less altruistic motives? This question challenges the narrative of the Emperor as a purely benevolent figure, suggesting a deeper, more complex agenda. The nature of Horus's fall is another contentious topic. While it is widely accepted that his exposure to the warp on Davin played a significant role in his transformation, the exact mechanisms and extent of his corruption remain unclear. Was he fully aware of the consequences of his choices, or was he manipulated by forces beyond his control? Some theorists argue that Horus's rebellion was less about personal ambition and more about a fundamental ideological clash with the Emperor's vision. Others suggest that the Chaos Gods exploited latent flaws and insecurities within him, turning him into a pawn in their eternal war against the material world. The role of chaos itself in the heresy raises further questions. While it is evident that the Chaos Gods had a vested interest in destabilizing the Imperium, the exact extent of their influence over events is uncertain. Did they orchestrate the heresy from the very beginning, planting seeds of doubt and discord within the Imperium, or did they simply capitalize on existing tensions? Some theories propose that chaos was not the sole driving force behind the heresy, but merely one of many factors, with the Imperium's internal contradictions playing an equally significant role. Another unresolved issue concerns the Emperor's handling of his creations and their eventual rebellion. Critics of the Emperor's leadership often point to his failure to adequately address the emotional and psychological needs of his commanders. Was the rebellion inevitable due to the Emperor's inability to fully grasp the complexities of his subordinates' minds and ambitions? Or were the events of the heresy avoidable had the Emperor taken a different approach? This question highlights the delicate balance between authority and trust, and whether the Emperor's methods were ultimately flawed. The loyalties and motivations of certain individuals and factions during the heresy also remain a topic of speculation. While some were clearly aligned with either Horus or the Emperor, others operated in shades of gray, pursuing their own agendas. The shifting allegiances of key players and the reasons behind these shifts are often debated. Were they driven by ideology, personal grievances, or a calculated assessment of which side offered the best chance of survival? This ambiguity adds depth to the heresy, showing it as more than a binary conflict between good and evil. One of the most intriguing mysteries is the true nature of the visions and prophecies that surrounded the heresy. Reports of cryptic warnings and premonitions emerged from various sources, some of which appeared to accurately predict key events. Were these visions genuine glimpses of a predetermined future, or were they manipulations designed to influence the actions of those involved? The possibility that the heresy was foretold raises questions about the role of destiny and free will in the galaxy's history. The aftermath of the heresy also leaves much to ponder. The official records of the conflict were heavily censored, with the ecclesiarchy and other imperial institutions shaping the narrative to serve their own purposes. How much of the heresy's true history has been suppressed, and what would happen if these hidden truths were revealed? The potential consequences of such revelations, both for the Imperium and its enemies, are a subject of intense speculation. Would the knowledge bring clarity and reconciliation, or would it ignite new conflicts and further destabilize the galaxy? Another significant theory revolves around the Emperor's ultimate fate and whether his current state was part of a larger plan. As he lies entombed on the Golden Throne, sustaining the Imperium through his psychic power, some question whether this outcome was foreseen or intended. Was the Emperor's incapacitation a necessary sacrifice to ensure humanity's survival, or was it the result of a failure to anticipate the full consequences of the heresy? The ambiguity of this situation fuels speculation about the Emperor's true capabilities and whether he retains some level of awareness and influence over the Imperium. Finally, the long-term impact of the heresy on the galaxy and its inhabitants remains a source of debate. The conflict shattered the unity of the Imperium and left scars that continue to shape its culture and politics. Was the heresy an isolated event, or was it the beginning of a cycle of rebellion and chaos that will ultimately lead to the Imperium's downfall? Some theorists suggest that the heresy exposed fundamental flaws in the Imperium's structure, while others argue that it demonstrated the resilience and adaptability of humanity. These unresolved questions and theories ensure that the Horus Heresy remains a dynamic and engaging topic, inviting endless exploration and reinterpretation. Each new revelation or perspective adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate narrative, keeping the mystery of the heresy alive for generations to come. The long-term consequences of the Horus Heresy stretch far beyond its immediate destruction, continuing to influence the galaxy in profound ways. Its legacy is not merely a historical chapter, but an active force shaping the Imperium and its place in the cosmos. As the truth behind the heresy remains obscured, the potential for its secrets to be revealed represents both a dire threat and an unprecedented opportunity for the galaxy. One of the most immediate consequences of uncovering the secrets of the heresy would be a dramatic shift in the Imperium's foundation of faith and authority. The current Imperium is sustained by a narrative that venerates the Emperor as a god and portrays Horus as the ultimate traitor. This simplified dichotomy has allowed the ecclesiarchy and other imperial institutions to maintain control over a fractured and chaotic empire. A revelation that challenges these fundamental beliefs, such as evidence of the Emperor's own failings or Horus's actions being influenced by forces beyond his control, could destabilize this fragile unity. Should such truths come to light, the Imperium would face a crisis of legitimacy. Entire populations, conditioned to worship the Emperor as infallible, might reject the Imperium's rule if its foundation is exposed as a mixture of lies and suppression. Alternatively, this knowledge could inspire rebellion, as factions previously subdued by the dogma of imperial faith might see an opportunity to challenge the established order. The resulting upheaval could weaken the Imperium's ability to defend itself against external threats, leaving humanity vulnerable to alien invasions, chaos incursions, and internal fragmentation. The discovery of secrets surrounding Horus's motivations and his connection to the warp could also have far-reaching consequences for humanity's understanding of the Immaterium. If it were revealed that Horus's fall was not entirely of his own making, but instead a result of manipulation by the Chaos Gods, it might prompt a re-evaluation of humanity's approach to the warp. Such revelations could lead to efforts to better understand and possibly control the Immaterium, though this would be fraught with risk. Conversely, they could validate the Imperium's current policy of suppression and fear, reinforcing its rejection of any engagement with psychic phenomena beyond what is strictly necessary. Key to the potential uncovering of these secrets are those who still harbor knowledge of the heresy's true nature. Among them are the hidden records maintained by the Inquisition, an organization founded in the heresy's aftermath to root out heresy and corruption. The Inquisition's archives likely contain fragments of suppressed truths, though they are fiercely guarded and only accessible to a select few. If even a fraction of this information were leaked, it could ignite widespread controversy and curiosity, drawing others to investigate further. The enigmatic figure of the Emperor himself remains a central factor in the potential revelation of the heresy's truths. Entombed on the Golden Throne, his state is one of enduring mystery. Some believe he is still conscious, while others view him as little more than a corpse sustained by machinery. If the Emperor were ever to awaken or otherwise communicate directly with humanity, his words could either validate or upend the official narrative of the heresy. Such an event would likely lead to both chaos and renewal as the galaxy grapples with the implications of his message. Other potential sources of revelation include surviving individuals who played a role in the heresy. Figures such as the chaos-aligned warlords who retain their memories of those events might seek to exploit this knowledge for their own gain, whether by spreading disinformation or leveraging their understanding to destabilize the Imperium further. Loyalist remnants with access to forgotten truths might similarly come forward, though their revelations would likely be met with skepticism or outright suppression by the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus also represents a potential source of insight. Their relentless pursuit of knowledge and ancient technology often brings them into contact with artifacts and records from the heresy era. If a discovery were made that shed light on Horus's motivations or the Emperor's plans, it could provoke a schism within their ranks as factions debate the implications of such knowledge. The Mechanicus's loyalty to the Imperium might be tested if these revelations conflict with their own doctrines or ambitions. From a broader perspective, the potential exposure of the heresy's secrets might inspire ideological movements within the Imperium and beyond. Those who view the heresy as a tragic misunderstanding might advocate for reconciliation and reform, seeking to address the underlying issues that led to humanity's greatest conflict. Others might embrace the heresy's revelations as evidence of the Imperium's failure, using them to justify rebellion or the establishment of alternative systems of governance. On a more hopeful note, the uncovering of these truths could serve as a catalyst for renewal. If humanity were able to confront the mistakes and failings of the past, it might be better equipped to forge a more stable and enlightened future. The heresy, though devastating, offers lessons about the dangers of secrecy, ambition, and unchecked power. Acknowledging these lessons could lead to reforms that strengthen the Imperium or even pave the way for a new era of unity and progress. However, the risks of such revelations cannot be underestimated. The Imperium's rigid structure and dependence on dogma mean that any challenge to its foundational myths could result in widespread instability. The forces of chaos would undoubtedly seek to exploit any such turmoil, using humanity's doubt and division to further their own ends. Similarly, alien factions might see an opportunity to strike at a weakened Imperium, escalating existing conflicts and threatening humanity's survival. In the end, the long-term consequences of the Horus Heresy will depend on how its truths are uncovered, interpreted, and acted upon. Whether the galaxy moves toward enlightenment or destruction hinges on the choices of those who seek to uncover these secrets and the resilience of the Imperium in facing its darkest legacy. The heresy's shadow looms large, its significance extending far beyond its time, ensuring that its mysteries will remain a source of speculation and debate for millennia to come.